Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be refactoring what we built last time into a component. You'll notice that there are lots of similarities. First we have the same 4 fields, and then we have a button that calls the action done editing when you hit it. Here we have an action that saves and then does something else. Just like here we have an action that saves and then does something else. When you have this pattern of having some template and some code that's connected and similar across 2 different parts of your app, it might be time for a component. Because components abstract away shared functionality, shared units of functionality. They consist of a class and a template, although Ember will generate the other one of those if you only create one. If you're familiar with Cocoa, you'll notice that Ember components are very similar to the Cocoa view controllers. And if you're familiar with Angular, you'll notice that they are exactly the same as an Angular directive that is isolate scoped, bidirectionally bound, transcluded, and element restricted. We'll go one by one over what those mean. Here, we're calling a component called PostForm. We haven't created it yet, but let's go ahead and fill out some of what the calling will look like and what variables we're going to give it. So it's isolated, which means that the scope that is here in this template, where we have things like title, is not going to carry through to the PostForm. Luckily, it's also bidirectionally bound, so it has 2-way bindings. So if we do this, then it's saying that what's the model here, the thing that we're pulling title and author from, because title is just shorthand for model.title. We're going to call it post within the component. Transcluded has some technical meanings, but for the purposes of components, it basically means that you can put custom content into the middle of a component. So it would look like this. You'll notice that this looks similar to how a link to is formed. But we don't need that today for this feature, so we won't talk more about it. Finally, element restricted means that the component will end up being an HTML element. It's a div by default. Now let's create the markup for our template. I'm putting it in a file called postform.handlebars. It's in the components directory of the templates directory. What I'm going to do first is just cut and paste from the new handlebars. And then I'm going to edit to make up for the scope change, because model is now called post and it's no longer implicit. Let's go ahead and do this in the editing form as well. When we go to edit our post, we'll see that all the fields are still there, but clicking the done button does nothing, because nothing is yet handling that action. Yes, there is this done editing action in post.js. However, since the component is isolate scoped, it's going to throw away the action before it can get to the post controller. So we'll create a new file in the components directory called PostForm. We're going to be creating something that extends an Ember component. And for now, all we'll have on it is an actions hash with the done editing action. Let's go ahead and test that this is working by logging out a simple message. And after it reloads, we'll go and edit and hit done, and it's logged. So now we need to put in the action that we want. You'll notice that things that this and this have in common are that they save the model and then they do something else. we're going to be copying the form of this because it is more general than the form here. Here, the order of this is not important. However, here, it's important that controller.transitionedRoute happens only after the post is done saving. So we'll use the more general case rather than the specific case where the order doesn't matter. So we're going to save it and then get our promise. And inside the promise, what do? Well, it's different on each of these. On new, it's transitioning to the post route. But when you're within the post, it's just changing is editing to false. So what we'll need to do is here we're going to pass in an after save action, a variable. And this is going to be done editing. And we'll go ahead and do that here as well. The after save that you're passing in happens to be called the same thing. However, it is doing something different. And we'll go ahead and strip these down to their most basic, the things that are unique to them. And we'll go ahead and do that with this one as well. And when we go back to PostForm, we will just call send action, and then we'll give it the after save action and pass in the post. If we go to edit a post, we will change this up and then see that it has indeed been changed and it's going back to the non-editing state. Then when we create a new post, we will try this as well, and it transitions to the posts page. I'm noticing that I cargo coded the variable named controller from our controller action. And that implies that this is the controller scope. It's not, it's the component scope. Of course, Ember didn't care because it's just something that we're using for human readability. But for future users, naming it something like this is very helpful. So now you know how to change part of your code into a component. You can now put a post form anywhere in your app, and it will function very similarly to how our current two post forms work. Now have a great week, and good luck using this in your own apps. And also, if you're still watching this on YouTube, I have a site now, and you can look at all the SparkCasts as well as sort them by topic. I hope that's helpful to you, and I'll see you next week.